Well, I think it's time to get started. I would like to welcome you to our second panel today, Social Media and Digital Journalism, Conflict and Convergence. I would like to welcome our distinguished panelist, Olivia Hanson, a Swedish journalist and a program director of the National News Program on SVT. He's also a former chief editor of and the publisher of Örebro's local newspaper, Nerikes Allehanda. Henry Heiken, an activist, a blogger, and at the same time the CEO of the Foil Chat in Finland. His company provides secure communication tools for individuals and organizations concerned over privacy. And last but not least, Rubal Hel, an expert from the Middle East, a journalist and a lecturer at the Notre Dame University in Lebanon. Actually, the panel, we should be talking about social media and the digital journalism, but I would like to take as a point of departure, since we are still on this hot issue about privacy, and we have the opportunity of having the management of SVT, We have heard kind of, complaints about the role of the management when it comes to the privacy of journalists, and I think I would like to take this as a point of departure and ask you, what do you do to secure your journalists as a manager?
I suppose we can be criticized for a lot and we could do more, but actually right now we have been launching a tool for our sources and our audience to communicate with us and in a safe way deliver documents or videos or whatever. We are calling it TV Leaks. So on the website you can that could be a good information for people here if you have good stories for us or good things. So this is as safe as we think. We have worked a lot with it. We have put a lot of time and money into the solution, and it's as safe as it's possible to get today, I would say. So now we have a solution for people, and this is together with our investigative program, Uppdrag Granskning, that is handling a lot of very sensitive material. So it's both for news and for Uppdrag Granskning. Very shortly, if I could give you an example also, that even if we think that we now have a very secure solution, I would say that there are a lot of things that we should not handle like this anyway, because if I just take the example of the Snowden documents, where we had the Swedish versions of the Snowden documents, we handle it in totally different ways, and it was just a very, very few journalists handling that material. We had it on not in our network and not on the internet in any way when we were working with that material, and we also just up until when it was time to broadcast the news, then we put it into the company network. So I would say that if you would like to be really safe, you should use personal meetings or other kinds of ways of handling very sensitive information. So it's important, but this is a way for us to give our sources a way of communicating with us.
Henry, I know you are quite interested to restore the journalists and people's trust in social media, and you're interested to secure their privacy. As I understand, you are developing some sort of application, and you have some alternatives and some solutions. Can you tell us more about those alternatives?
Yes, of course. I personally think that there are two kinds of surveillance. There's a kind of open surveillance that Google, Apple, other companies do that you basically know about. You know that they can see what you type there. And I would compare it to you going out to shopping mall or somewhere else where you are in public. And then there's other ways of surveillance, which are basically what the government does, what is hidden from us. And I would compare it to someone stalking you in the shadows when you are at your home and you don't want anyone to be seeing what you're doing, even if you are not doing anything wrong. And I'm not actually that concerned about the privacy on the Facebook or Google. You should treat them as public places in the end, and you should treat them as going out to the mall. But what I want to provide, what our company wants to provide, would be tools to hide yourself from the unintended, from the surveillance you don't want to happen, from when you want to go home, close the windows, and when you want to be private and have a private discussion with someone. Of course, there's no way to have an application that's 100% proof, because every time when there's some kind of message is sent, even if it's not digital, if it's just spoken, it can be intercepted. Someone can hear it, someone can see you meeting someone, or someone can see that you have sent message or whatever. But it's the mass surveillance that we want to work against. So you can be quite hidden, and you can be hidden enough so you can feel safe. You don't need to be afraid that someone is constantly watching what you are typing or what you are doing. And that's what we want to do. And earlier was mentioned that there are different ways to have a secure communication. There are different email encryption services and so on, and it has been for like 10 years, 15 years. But the issue is that it's very complicated to use, it's very hard to use, and more secure it gets, the less usable it's for users. And what we want to do, we want to make an application that handles everything, but it is as easy to use as your everyday phone applications that you use. So that's how we believe that people can have more privacy, and how the security is increased by making an application that's actually easy to use for everyday use.
Roba, it's an opportunity. We have an expert from the Middle East.
Thank you.
And we would like you to reflect upon the issues of security of journalists and people using social media in the Middle East.
First of all, I have a question. Yeah, I have something. The question of security in the Middle East is totally different from what you have here in Europe or in the West. We don't have this issue of like someone is going to hack our account as journalists, because for one reason, people who are in the policy-making business, they know nothing about internet, so they have no emails, they don't understand the business, so that will keep us for a while on the safe side. For example, I've just discovered that we have 128 parliament members. 8 of them have only emails. 4 of them know how to use the email, and the rest, they have assistants. So we don't have this issue as Snowden effect. Of course, we followed it, we liked it, but it's not the same issue that we have. Another issue we have is the WikiLeaks issue that we liked and we've enjoyed, and many people say that it was actually the reason that we had the Arab Spring that started in Tunisia and it has been flourishing. We don't know if we should call it now Arab Spring or not. That's also another issue. With WikiLeaks, people started to know things about our politicians, for example, and things that we knew, but we didn't have the evidence, like our politicians had said this to the ambassador of the US and Lebanon, and they said something against someone else. So the question became as, it's more like the gossip of the media and the use of WikiLeaks as to know what happened. Now, did it change anything? No. That's also something that what is totally different from here, because policy making is not this, it's not the same as you can have something and you can push it and then it's passed. It takes a long process, and we're still in this process as a matter of, because we are an underdeveloped country and we're part of the Arab world.
Well, thank you, Roba. Back to you, Olaf. While there appears social media and digital journalism are rapidly converging, one can argue that there are cases where they conflict with each other, particularly in terms of quality and speed. I would like to see how you at SVT try to maintain this balance between quality. How do you verify the data you get through social media How do you keep both your quality and you don't, kind of reproduce some rumors that are there sometimes in social media and maintain your speed?
I try to, I think that there are different levels here and different kinds of using social media. I try to be rather short so that I don't talk too much, because I can do that. But, I mean, we use social media if you're talking about national news. We are communicating with the audience a lot on social media, and we are trying to get stories from them. Now in this election year, we've had a solution that we call Your Voice, Din Röst, where people, our audience, are connecting with us, and they are telling us what kind of areas we should cover. They can get in stories to us that we can use in that. So in that way, social media can be very, very efficient for journalists. But on the other hand, you have, you can also divide national and international ways of it, because if it's a dramatic event in Sweden happening, you can very fast get videos from smartphones or something like that from the audience, if there is a robbery or a big fire or something like that. Then you have to start being cautious about who has delivered this video. Is it really from this event? What is it showing? Is it any ethical problems or things like that? But of course, it's even more questions if you're talking about videos in the same way, or from social media, if you're talking about from the war in Syria or Ukraine now, where it's a really a struggle between who is going to set the agenda for what is happening in Ukraine in both sides. So you really have problems in investigating or trying to see what sources is it and what's the intention of spreading this information or these pictures or this video. So I think it's both. It's a good development for media, because there are new ways of getting material, but it's also a big challenge to question and really check up the sources and things like that.
I mean, is there a certain way, if you can develop more on how do you actually check those sources? Because it has been some, maybe not with the Swedish television, but it is there that in a lot of other media, you kind of reproduce the same picture, which is already coming from Syria, like what happened in Cairo from Rabaa, and there was pictures coming from Syria, for example, and then it was widespread in global media. Yeah. So what are the procedures that you really do when you double check, and what happens if you really put the wrong footage and then you realize?
Well, I think that there are different ways of doing that as well, because one way is that our correspondents, as Lena and the other one, they have sources and connections with people in different areas. We've had correspondents, for example, in Syria in different ways and different times, and we have people that we know down there. That could be one way of using material that we know what sources, what kind of persons has delivered it. I know also when I was on the convention down in Morocco this year that there are more and more, even if it's not professional journalists, there are people that really tries to get out material from Syria that is checked by different organizations and things like that. So there are ways of checking it. But anyway, there are material that is spread all over the media, as you say, and when you can't be really sure, and then you have to either decide we don't publish it, we don't broadcast it, or you can decide that this is interesting, we can do it, but we can tell about how that we are not certain about where it comes from and who is delivering it. But it's always very hard decisions when it comes to that.
Thank you. Henry, can you tell me what makes your particular application more vulnerable than the other applications that are around? And also if there are some tips you can give us of how to maintain our work secured?
Well, from technical point of view, I wouldn't bore you with the technical details, but it has a strong end-to-end encryption when it's encrypted live on the phone, on the application as you use it. Of course, it can't protect you if there's some like crazy NSA hack on the phone that will record every finger, every time you touch it with your finger or something like that. But it will give you, let's say, a pretty good protection, as it's called. And as I earlier told, the secret is not in the technical details. It's strong end-to-end encryption with all the highest standards of today. But what makes it important is it's that it's easy to use, and it has many features such as you can chat privately, you can go anonymously in public channels, you can transfer files, you can store your files encrypted in cloud, and you can broadcast messages in a, let's say, some like mix-up of Twitter and WikiLeaks. So the features like that, and it should cover pretty much all your basic communication needs. We are working on encrypted VoIP calls and so on. So it should be easy to use and have a pretty good protection. But about how you personally can increase, I think that the first thing would be to change your passwords, because usually the highest risk is sitting between the computer and the chair, and it's the one who uses his or her first name as password and doesn't really care about security. Because in the end, there are, for example, with Google, there are a lot of privacy and protection options that you simply don't use because you don't care enough. So it's not rocket science, it's just about you caring enough that you use that, check that one point that I want to be more private, or you use that virus detection software or something like that. It's just simple things that would keep you protected from the biggest threats. What comes to different kinds of surveillance, you can use different types of encryptions in your email, and it won't protect you from if some agency or someone with a lot of resources wants to target you precisely, but it would protect you from the mass surveillance, which is, I think that it's the most important thing, because I personally don't want to give advice to people who have things that are so secret that they really, really need to hide, such as big crime or things like that.
Thank you, Henry. We'll try to follow. Again, back to the Middle East. I really want to take the opportunity of having Middle Eastern around. How do you see the future of citizen journalism and self-publishing through blogs and other online platforms? How do they survive the storm of those security measures? Because it's not a matter of, now we are talking about this internet security, but in the Middle East it's a bit different. It might be government and political pressures rather than this technological security. So can you please talk to us more about your opinion on that?
Regarding the Middle East, I can speak only about Lebanon because I'm particularly know about Lebanon. I know a bit of things about Syria and Cairo, but it's not the same. For example, in Lebanon, we have a problem that a lot of Facebook people who wrote on Facebook things against the president, things against the government, were arrested. And they were arrested under a law which is related to the print media, because we don't have a law regarding the online media yet. The law is drafted, it has been there for like 5-6 years, but it didn't pass yet because they don't know what to do with it. So a lot of people who were bloggers, media activists, they were tweeting things and they were arrested. Self-publishing is flourishing around the Middle East. I follow news about Cairo, about Tunisia through bloggers, and I've established some kind of a relationship as a credibility relationship with them because I've checked the news. And this is something really important, how to actually, self-publishing is rated to create an engaged citizenship, engaged people who can understand what is happening online. And we have a new trend now, which is live blogging. We can go online, and it's actually something that it's done with Al-Masri Al-Yawm, which is a daily newspaper in Egypt. People can actually, they can report what's happening around Cairo, around Egypt, and they are like the crowdsourcing stuff, and you can double check this thing, and at the end it's published. A lot of things were actually discovered through these kind of media. Why? Because social media is an alternative news for everyone around the Arab world, especially for those who cannot be heard, especially that we have the print journalism, which is still under the control of censorship somehow. And we have different kinds of laws, especially in Lebanon, for example. The censorship law dates back to 1949, and we are in 2014. And no one can imagine how we can apply something which it actually before TV stations in Lebanon, and now we have to apply it on the internet. So self-publishing, somehow, we have a lot of bloggers. If you go online, you can check many different bloggers. But the problem which I see with the Lebanese bloggers in particular, that they publish. And online, you don't publish, you push the message. They think that they're writing to their public and to their audience, and they don't understand that there is a really huge blog sphere outside, and they are not really trying to reach. How to reach it? You have a lot of ways, like publishing in English about what's happening in Lebanon, not publishing only in Arabic and publishing only for the Arab world. If your concern is to actually let the people know what's happening inside your country as only your citizen, or to get engaged around the universal citizen, that's also another question, another issue. The public interest, is it only local? All news is local, or is it also worldwide? That's also something that it has to be defined. It's still in the process. It's still trial and error, but people are trying their best. And I think it's something similar to everywhere around the world. The question of access to information. Are we able to actually know what our governments are doing? The question of transparency, the question of what is the agenda? Am I writing behind, I have an agenda to become publicly known, to get paid, or to actually inform the public? So these are the questions also to be answered for the future.
Thank you, Roba. Now we have some time we can open the floor for some questions from the audience. And the floor is open if you have any questions. Yeah.
Should we bring down?
Yeah, we can bring down this.
Thank you. I'm Guy Berger from UNESCO. I wanted to ask Henry. So there would still be issues, I imagine, with the metadata of, because email still needs to go from somebody to somebody, so that you cannot encrypt that, because then there's not, it's like a letter with an address that nobody can read. And then there perhaps the other issues of whether the routers have got some kind of detection, interception stuff, and all the other aspects of the value chain. You did mention viruses and so on, but I'm wondering whether if you present your software, people don't become under the illusion that actually everything is anonymous, whereas there's still much other data or other ways in that. All that electronic communication can be tracked somehow or another.
Yes, all the communication can be tracked somehow. Of course, we are working hard to make it as difficult as possible by hiding and hashing and shuffling all the information. But I don't think that I think that people shouldn't have the illusion of total security, because it's not true. It will never be true. So what we want to do is we want to give some kind of illusion, not illusion, some kind of protection. As you would compare it, I would compare it to being in your house. You want to have curtains, even if you know that someone can come through the window, but you still know that if you have the window, you have the curtains, you are safe enough. And that's what is important, because I personally find the worst thing there is the mass surveillance, because everyone here is only one election away from getting persecuted for something that you think is okay at the point, but it can be illegal after some election or some coup or something else. And that's why big data is problematic, because we can collect a lot of data of your use, of your emails, of your friends now, and after the next Swedish military coup, they can use that data against you. And of course it's a small risk here, but you never know. We have seen in history that it can happen. Well, not in the history of Sweden, but in a lot of other countries.
Well, I saw there was a question there.
My name is Eden. I'm a Master of Global Journalism student. And I want to say something about, in the developing world, we have mistrust of the media. So people tend to trust what people share on social media rather than rely on the media, what the media gives them. So there's this tendency for journalists to become liberated when they share something on their Facebook pages or when they tweet something. So I was just wondering, it's a question to Ulf, if you have any policy that people should or should not post something, what kind of information do they have to, or do you have something that says you should post this or not this one, or I don't know.
Do you mean among our journalists?
Yeah, journalists.
Yeah, all right. First, I would just want to comment on what you said about trust in media. I think that because that was also mentioned earlier, I think that we have a new situation. Still we have a lot of very good trust in not least the public service companies in Sweden and the journalists there, so that's good. But I can tell you that the new ways of communicating with social media and things like that, that makes really the difference for journalists in this part of the world as well, because there are so much more sources today for the people to get things, and I would say that a lot of people probably have bigger trust in someone they know well that is writing about it on social media than what they can, at least they can compare it with what the media is reporting. So it's really a new situation for all journalists all over the world today, I would say. On the other thing you said, Lena mentioned here earlier, there are some different things of thinking about, because you can think about security when you're talking about social media. When we have correspondents going into Syria, for example, they could not use anything before they get back out of the country. They should not use. We have we have very lot of security measures, what they do and not do, and as Lena mentioned, the way of you should not post any information on where you are, for example, in a lot of countries if you are a journalist. So that is one aspect on that question. But if it's not a security measure, I would say that we try to influence all the journalists to use the social media in many ways. And if I just take one example, our best political reporters usually send tweets directly from the occasions or press conferences or things like that. That is much quicker than what we can deliver in even in the website or wherever. So we can be very fast, and they have a lot of followers. So we have new ways of distributing information, and they usually have a very high trust, these reporters, because they are experts in different areas. So I would say that we try to make the journalists use the social media in different ways, communicating, getting information, or getting news out. Was that an answer on the question?
Yeah, somehow, but I was just asking
Just
about...
somehow?
Pretty much. But I was actually asking about whether they should post something about their political views, some controversial issues.
Sorry, I misunderstood you. That is a very important question in public service, because public service have very strict rules about you should not, as a journalist in public service, you can't engage or express political views in public, because we should really be balanced in our ways of... I would say that there are more rules if you are a journalist in public service than if you are a journalist in a private company, even if I'm sure that they have a lot of ethical rules there as well. But that is a discussion that we have all the time about what is okay to put on Facebook, for example. Actually, there's a court case, you might call it. I don't know if that's the right English word, but there are an employee at a public service company that expressed his views about a very sensitive political local question, and the company said, you can't be reporting here anymore if you do like that. So now the union are struggling. So that is a very important question, I would say, in public service.
Yeah.
About media and social media, I think that one very important function of social media is that it gives the public different points of views about the media itself, and it also gives a public, let's say that it gives out, it shows if the public trusts the source. So, for example, if the Swedish national media makes an article about politics, then you can see from the social media, if what is the reaction for the article. You can see different points of views, people commenting on that, people can say that that's not true, or I see that happened differently, and that's one important aspect what the social media is doing for the media now. It's like watching the watchers.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because it's a question also. It's how to separate fact from fiction online, and it's something really, it's not easy. And when you are a journalist working in a website and you are under the pressure of a click and they're following you because your article has to be viewed by at least 500 viewers per this minute and this day, and then if you don't, you have to be fired. It's really a question of ethics and a question of a profession and a question of a career-wise. What should I do? How to separate fact from fictions. I'm also an activist, and we've created something with a group of people around us and communities. It's called online fact-checking, and we've done this with different rural areas, how to actually tell which website is actually photoshopping something like a picture. They're using a picture which has been used before, or they're using a picture which has been actually modified just to attract viewers, or actually using picture where they don't have the right to use it. And how to double check the news that you read on Facebook, on Twitter, and everywhere. And it's not something easy, and it's something that has been actually, people that were shocked that they didn't know that this actually person said something, and he's credible because he appears on TV, the question of authority, and he said that this has happened. And when you check it online, it doesn't exist. So how do you do these things? That's also another thing. It's how to establish some kind of a guide about how to separate fact from fiction. And it's a virtual word, whether we like it or not, but it's still something. So something that we should not even dismiss, the value of having someone outside, the value of having sources on the field, the value of having someone whom I can call someone in Sweden and double check, did it happen or not? So yes, the virtual world is something really important, but separating these two lines is really important because negative thoughts, they actually are disseminated easily than any positive thoughts around the world. And for example, people would ask me, you're coming from Lebanon, how is the situation there? You have war. We don't have war, but this is how the media is actually showing us. So how do you know these things? You have to have a source in your area to double check, of course, a credible source with whom you can actually trust and you know that you're not going to have a scandal afterward.
Can I just comment on,
sure.
on what Henry said? Not arguing, just commenting, because I agree on you that there's a lot of views about what we are reporting today, and that could be both interesting and it could be hard for our journalists because just 2 or 3 short examples. When we are broadcasting our big news at night, now we have to sit and follow the tweets all the time because there is always debates about, especially Aktuellt, the big one with guests in the studio. And now when we have an election year, it's very much political people who are from the different parties who debate, or did that politician get as much time as the other one, or was the news anchor being harder on the one another? So that's one kind of what's happening. But you can also see that, which is a problem, I think, because you can always be captured as well of different kinds of trolls, as we say it in Sweden anyway, but when we are using different kinds of social media and suddenly, and it's not seldom the ones that are criticizing our immigration policy or they are towards racism, they are not always racists, but towards that area. And if they capture, and they are very skillful in being a lot of people going into that debate, and it's just about criticizing people from other countries, for example. So it's a really new challenge for us, keeping our guard up for that kind of reactions in the social media around journalism. And that is very often today that happens.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're pointing at an important point about when you kind of grab attention through dissemination of some racist views, and I'm glad that you are aware of that, but to what extent do you allow those voices to come out?
Well, it depends on what they are, if they are really racist or if they are even against the law, about even against our very wide freedom of expression, then of course we can't let them out. But you have to really accept a debate sometimes. If you take, for example, Your Voice, as I mentioned, when we started up that, we started with the healthcare issues in Sweden. And the debate on social media was originally about the healthcare and experiences of that. But after a couple of days, it was captured by, and it was more and more about, it's all the immigrants that is doing that, we can't get any health care for my old mother or things like that. And we kept it for a while, but after that we went into that debate and said, now we are going to skip all views about immigrants or things like that. This is healthcare we are discussing here. We don't censor you, we don't remove I think 5 of them were over the line, so we removed them. The other ones we kept, but we said no more of that, because that is not what we are discussing here. And after that, we had no problems, actually, in that Facebook account, Your Voice. So you have to be on guard, as you say, and you have to really work with it.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
I have a question. Mike already. I have a question for Henry, because it's kind of direct. Like very recently was discovered this bug in the open SSL technology, HTTPS, which has to provide protection to like thousands of websites as regards passwords and usernames and all these things. And it has been like undiscovered for 2 years. And my question is about what his view. What happens when technology, which is supposed to keep us safe, fails?
Well, what happens is that it fails and you lose your password, and in the worst case you lose your money. And nothing is totally fail-proof. Nothing in this world is totally fail-proof, and that's a fact you have to accept, and you have to personally take that into account, that always something can happen and you shouldn't trust too much. You should always consider that there's some risk in this, and that's just a matter of fact. That's just a fact of life. I mean, so wherever there is some technology, it eventually will fail somehow, and you just have to take that on account. And we personally believe that the best way to keep things safe, keep things working, is to have open technology, to have open source, have as much people as possible to look on your code, to look on your application, to test it, to see it if there are any flaws. And that's how all the worst flaws are found as soon as possible. But nothing is ever completely safe.
Well, I would like to add something from your answer, because basically what you are saying is that, yeah, we have technology which is supposed to keep us safe, but as well we have to, use our common sense in order to keep ourselves safe as well.
Yeah, you have to use your common sense. You have your car has airbags and all kind of security features, but it still won't save you if you drive like a maniac.
Okay.
I have a question about the economical aspect. Like how people get news now. For example, I subscribe just on a famous journalist, as you said, and that's how I get news. I just check my Facebook, and then I see what those famous journalists who have like thousands of followers, they wrote. But if everybody will start to do that, so newspaper will not get any profit. Nobody will go to the website to read the news. So, and it's back to the question about the policies. Don't you think that you should somehow regulate this process? Because if every journalist will post materials that are supposed to be published only on the website, then how, what's the future of the online newspapers then?
Well, I think it's two different problems there. I agree on you that I'm a bit afraid that it will be hard to get people paying for news and for journalism in the future. You can see that already, and that could be, at least that could be something that the quality is going down on journalism, because you can't have as many journalists, you can't have as skillful journalists, because you can't pay them enough. So I think that is a problem, at least for commercial media organizations. If you're talking about public service, we have another way of financing. So that is not but it would be very sad in Sweden if the only media organizations that is working in Sweden are public service. I mean, it's diversity, that is a lot of different voices. I don't mean that it has to go that bad, but I think it's a threat to journalism today. But if you take the other way, if you to post a short news with a tweet or something like that, that I would not say is competing with the journalism. If you take the example again with our political reporter, because if he tweets out that now the Prime Minister has sacked his defense minister, then it's very quick news. But what he does after that, and what his journalism is, getting more into the story, the background, the analyze, all these things that is important if we are going to defend what is good journalism. So I think it's both. You can be very fast on social media or on the website or wherever, but then you can do the in-depth story, and you can do it differently in an article on the website or in a story on TV. So I think that is possible to do without threatening the journalism.
Henry, I think you.
Yes, I just wanted to say that from purely economical point of view, that's just an example of creative destruction, and the journalism is just one part of society, one part of economy that is constantly changing, and now we are just experiencing a bigger change than before, and it's normal for people to be afraid of the change, that they think that this would destroy the journalism or this will be a change to the worse, but it probably isn't. And I'm pretty sure that eventually the media will adapt. There will be new media, and there will be different ways to, let's say, publish trustworthy, reasonable journalism, because there is a demand for it. It might not be a huge corporation that is publishing it. It might be a group of smaller companies, or it might be individuals that are backed up by a web of trust or something like that. But I don't know, I'm no Nostradamus, but it's changing, and practically usually change is good.
Can I just add one experience there, because I'm supporting you in that. That is, I listened to Jan Helin, the editor-in-chief of Aftonbladet, or the publisher of Aftonbladet yesterday, and he says that the new technology is also a way of getting better economy, because when you are producing a print magazine or print newspaper, as they did earlier, you need a lot of money to get all the trees out of the wood and the paper and the print facilities. And now they have calculated how much money do you need to have a journalist organization running just a digital service, and it's not. It's far less money than they needed when they was just a print magazine. So there are opportunities in the new technique as well.
Yeah, just a quick comment. A friend of mine, for example, has started a startup in Finland that it's basically a crowdfunding service for journalism. And it works in a way that people can demand, or journalists can tell that they would be interested in making an article about this, and then people can fund the article itself if they are interested in reading that from that topic. And that's what the startup is doing. It's practically reversing the process. It's making people to pay for just the articles that they're interested in, and the people writing them are respected journalists that have worked with different medias for a long time.
Yeah, I would like to have like final, statements from each of you.
To wrap it
To
up.
wrap up, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that should journalism be free online, or shouldn't it be free? Should we get paid? Of course, we should get salaries, but should we actually pay for something, for the information, for the value of the information? That's also another question, which reminds me of the case of Aaron Schwartz 2 years ago, or maybe less, with the JSTOR, when he went online and he actually was able to, as a hacker, he was able to actually download maybe like 4,000 different files, and he was arrested by the FBI, and then he committed suicide. And then the question started again: should journalism be free or not? Should we pay for journalism? Yes, we should be paid as journalists, but who should pay us? Should be the crowd or should be the government? That's also another question of regulation, and it's actually related to your country. Another issue, if advertisers are paying for us, so they are controlling us in a different way, which means it's a power without responsibility somehow, because if, let's say, I don't know which company is paying for my media outlet, and I discovered that they're doing something related to corruption, I can't publish anything about it. Also, it's another question which has many different aspects. So we cannot just answer it in one session. It's a long discussion. I want just to end saying about something. When telegraph was invented, people used to write a lot, and we didn't have the concept of writing the inverted pyramid. And with the technological determinism, what is called the change happened, people started to write a little bit less because it was a question of money. We're paying more money because we are sending it by telegraph. Now we have a new telegraph, which is the Twitter, and there is a term which is, I don't know who said it, news doesn't break anymore, it tweets. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's a question also of if news is tweeting, so what are we doing here if we're going to be online, so we're going to be out of business? It's also another question, the question of a journalist. What are the elements of being a journalist? First of all, you're someone who actually investigates things. You're not an investigative reporter, but you have to investigate your facts. You have to double check. I tell my students, you have to bring at least 3 sources in your article. If you don't bring at least 3 sources, I would not accept your article. So I have to go outside and check. The question of ethics. Do we have ethics? What are the ethics? Do we have a code of conduct or not? Is it international or it has to be local? Do we have also an online media ethics? I've recently participated in something, and it's open online. In Louisiana State University, they claim to be the first online media ethics guide in English. And with the help of a veteran journalist, she's a blogger at Huffington Post also, I've translated the book, and I've made it Arabic, and with a different adaptation about the Arabic, and it's posted online for people to use it for free. It's called the Online Media Ethic Guide, and it's the first time for the Arab word. But people refuse to use something like this for a simple reason, because they are somehow trying to protect themselves. We don't want to actually lose what we had as kind of power of being a journalist, because we are informing you, and we have this kind of position that this is also very Arab word, that we are journalists and we're supposed to know the news before you, and if you know it before us, that will be something like an insult. So the question to be for the future, what do we have there? I think it's a huge thing, and it will be up and down, trial and error for many years until we have established some kind, what is our e-identity as journalists, and what is our real identity as part of the community, of the local community and the universal community.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so if you have some final remarks you would like to come and say.
Well, just quickly, that I think that in the end, the future of journalism is, and everything else is decided by the crowd, is decided by you and everyone using the internet. It depends what kind of journalism do you support with your wallet, what do you want to pay for, what do you click, what do you choose, what do you watch. And if I'm supposed to make some kind of guess what it will look like, it's probably all the journalism will be replaced with pictures of cats and dogs.
I just waited on because I wanted to have the last word, you know, so that's why I waited. But if I get back to what we should talk about, I don't know if I have been talking about that, social media and digital journalism, conflict of convergence. I think that there is going to be big changes, but I think if I'm a bit more optimistic than earlier, I think that there are mostly opportunities in a way of, it's going to be exciting to see how the journalism can develop together with the audience and the crowd, as you said. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for journalism as well.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank our panelists for today and for the interesting remarks you had. Thank you very much.